Elvis, thank you very much, and welcome back to Nasrec, where the sun has come out a little bit. It's a little bit warmer in Johannesburg this morning. We continue to broadcast to you from here, the ANC's National Policy Conference. It is, of course, day 5 today, and we are now joined by the chairperson, the Secretary General of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Blade Nzimande. Sir, good morning, and thank you so very much for joining us.
Good morning to you and your viewers and listeners.
Thank you, sir. Just very briefly, your take on the previous 5 days of the ANC's National Policy Conference.
Firstly, we're pleased that the conference allowed the first 2 days to look at organizational challenges, especially in the wake of the diagnostic report that was presented by the Secretary General. We hope those 2 days would have gone some way in beginning to assist the ANC to identify the problems further, but more than that, what is to be done to actually address those problems. And of course now, over the last day and a bit, we've been looking at your sectoral policy issues, education, the economy, and so on. The debates, I would say that the discussions, they've been fairly robust. And we hope that we will have an outcome that will be able to take the ANC forward and, of course, the alliance forward.
The policies, or before we talk on issues of policies, the first 2 days, according to the SACP, are you saddened that the veterans, in the end, never really pitched?
We wish that we could have had an understanding. It's not so much around the veterans, but we wish there could have been a better understanding between the ANC and the veterans on how to deal with this question of a consultative conference or the first 2 days and so on. But I notice quite a number of them are here in various other capacities, which is actually important in terms of engagement. For me, the most important thing is that, and for the SACP, is that the ANC is able to confront the realities that it faces as identified in that diagnostic report, especially these patronage parasitic networks that are actually threatening to undo a lot of advances that we've made over the last 23 years, but most significantly are actually threatening the unity of the ANC and the unity of the alliance. That's the main question that faces the ANC at this conference and going forward to the 54th conference at the end of the year.
In the commissions that you have attended, have you found that the discussions are frank and that, the parasitic networks, as you're calling it, are actually being addressed?
I would say that the commission I was in, yes, I was pleasantly surprised that people are coming out forward, to talk about awkward things, which is what we should do. Like, for instance, the toxic role that is played by this Gupta family, People, I find more and more people were actually talking about that. It's not the only challenge that we face, but it's one of the most immediate threats to actually moving forward to achieve the things that we need to achieve as a movement and the things that we need to achieve as a country.
What's the sentiment of the delegates around the issues of the Guptas? I mean, as you know, we're not allowed in, so,
Well, I can't be the one. I have no authority to give the report back. I'm sure the spokesperson, Comrade Zizi, when he joins you, maybe will be in a better position to actually do that.
But at least the discussions are frank.
The discussions are frank in the commissions that I've been in, and I've been very pleased about that there's frank. Of course, there are different views on some matters, which is to be expected. It's not a problem. But the issues are actually being surfaced. And even some discomforts. For instance, some of the delegates raising issues about how we should have dealt with the issue of the veterans, and so on. So that's a progress, a step forward, because we need everything now for the ANC to try and correct it and unite itself.
All right. Talking about the ANC correcting and uniting itself, it will largely center around the issues of policies. According to the SACP, are the key policies that the ANC must agree on to be able to take and move itself forward?
Frankly, there is no major challenge about ANC policies. problem is organizational paralysis at the moment, especially at leadership level that we are seeing. We think that the discussions on policy are broad enough. The issues that have been put on the table and so on. Of course, we are making our own contributions. For instance, our concern that not enough is being done in terms of decisive action to transform the financial sector and how we should be redirecting the trillions of rands that is in that sector. The fact that over 90% of our banking system is dominated by 4 banks, we would have liked to have seen a little bit more in-depth, decisive steps being taken, but we are raising it in any case here.
Would you characterize that as a lack of political will to act?
Look, we've been faced with quite a complex situation, if truth be told, because we are not in a great economic climate. We've been downgraded, we've challenged in terms of unemployment and so on. In some instances, yes, maybe there is lack of political will, but in other instances, the economic climate, we are not in a great position.
All right, and then let's talk a little bit, sir. If I could ask you to put on your other hat, that of Minister of Higher Education, what are we facing this year in terms of fees must fall, if any at all, and what must the ANC decide here at this policy conference to address the issues of fees must fall?
I don't think there is any new thing necessarily that the ANC needs to decide, because the ANC is committed to providing free higher education, at least up to the first undergraduate qualification, to poor students and working class students, as well as assist those who may be falling through the cracks. So it's a commitment that is being reaffirmed. The issue is resources, but the issue now is must be the recommendations of the Fees Commission, headed by Judge Hare, in terms of what its recommendations should be. Unfortunately, they are not here for the policy conference to be able to reflect upon, but we are very hopeful that very soon that will have to come out and for government to respond accordingly.
All right, and then if we can just briefly touch on the SACP's own conference that's coming up, I think, next week.
Yes.
What can we expect from that?
Well, it's always difficult to tell before congresses start. What I can share with you is what are some of the big questions that we'll be discussing. The first big question are the challenges facing our democracy and the challenges facing our movement. The immediate threat to our alliance, to our movement, are these parasitic patronage networks with the toxic role that is being played by the Gupta family in our affairs. Those will be the issues that we'll have to discuss, because people will say, why is the Communist Party preoccupied with the Guptas and not with monopoly capital? We say to them, where have they been, Over the last 20 years, we've been waging many campaigns against monopoly capital. And also, we are not going to defeat monopoly capital if you allow your state to be stolen. Because the state is one very big instrument that we have in our hands in order to be able to confront monopoly capital. You won't be able to confront monopoly capital if you have no ESCOM, if you have no Transnet, if you have no reserve bank. If those are captured by parasitic networks, then we are really in trouble. And in any case, this thing of posing that your Gupta-type networks are an alternative to monopoly capital, it's not true. It's two sides of the same coin, monopoly capital and these parasitic networks. Both are interested in accumulating.
At the expense of the people.
At the expense of the people, So it's very important that that's going to be discussed. But secondly, the party is going to be discussing what organizational form do we need to actually confront this issue that is facing us now. We need to build a broad patriotic type of popular forces.
All right. And
to be able to deal with some of the challenges that we face.
Are you going to stand for re-election?
I don't want to talk about that because I will be regarded as being ill-disciplined. All I can say, which I'm going to be honest about, there is a discussion right now that's ongoing in the party, even on the sidelines of this policy conference, because there are two issues. There is one view which says maybe we need renewal of leadership, which I agree with, by the way, but it's not for me to decide that. And then there is another view which says, but it's a very complicated period. You know, you need to be watchful that you don't all of a sudden just change leadership and only to find that then the party is caught off guard given the challenges that are there. But I'm quite convinced that by the time Congress starts, we would have found some kind of... Personally, I feel that I've made my own contribution as the General Secretary.
All right, and then just lastly, sir, before I let you go, I know you must go to your commission. The SACP, will the issue of the alliance be discussed, and whether or not you will continue to support the ANC in the upcoming elections?
We always discuss the alliance in our congresses, how to strengthen it, how to make it a better functioning alliance. The main issue this time around, which is also not entirely new, is that maybe we need to review not the necessity of the alliance, but its modus operandi, how it functions, so that it is able to move with the times.
All right. Sir, thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Blade Nzimande, speaking to us about giving us his take, at least, on the 5 days of the ANC's National Policy Conference, and also throwing it forward to the SACP's own conference that's coming up next week, basically saying that although he hasn't yet decided on the issue of whether or not he will stand to be re-elected, he does feel that he has made his own contribution as General Secretary. I'm now joined by the ANC spokesperson, Zizi Kodwa. Zizi, thank you very much for joining us, and good morning.
Thank you very much.
Your take on the 5 days, are you happy as the ANC so far?
It has gone beyond our expectation. And I think our expectation has always been that, among others, we must emerge here much more stronger. When we came here, even if there were doubts about the ability of the ANC to self-correct, I think the past 4 days, 5 days, do give us an indication that indeed our desire to emerge here as a strong organization, that has been achieved already. What is important, though, is our ability post the conference, whether indeed we'll be able to live up to the expectation and desires of our people and their aspirations.
How do you ensure that? How do you ensure that the decisions that are taken here, the spirit that's generated here is carried through, at least up until December, where a new leadership may be elected?
What I think we appreciate most is the ability of delegates gathered here, that first and foremost, the ANC is not a property of the members of the ANC. We are here on behalf of people of South Africa. And I think that is important, so that whatever we do, it's not about whom do we prefer to be the leader of the ANC. Even the policies we develop and formulate, as I gather going around the commissions, the spirit is to make sure that, among others, we resolve the contradictions in society, whether it's issues of class, issues of race, issues of gender. If the difficulty that our people are facing, our policies that we develop and formulate here, they must respond directly to those issues. So we need to make sure that, among others, we must have a monitoring entity, monitoring mechanism. There's an outcry generally that we have good policies, but implementation is bad. So we need to have a very strong monitoring as the ANC first and foremost, as well as government, to make sure that we put timeframes in the implementation of our policies.
I'm not sure if you were able to hear, but we just had the General Secretary of the SACP, Dr. Nzimande, and he was basically bemoaning the fact that there seems to be a lack of political will to implement what is decided on ANC policies. The issue is as you correctly point out, not the policy, but the implementation of it.
What is also important is the capacity of the state in the implementation of the ANC policies. Because it's one thing to have very progressive policies, and yet you don't have the capacity of the state, including what is called developmental public service. Because it's important to have a public service that shares the very same ethos, values, the objectives of the policies of the ANC. So among other debates which are important here in the context of building organizational design and renewal is the capacity of the state. Do we have a state that is capacitated enough to implement the kind of policies we have?
But also, before we go to the capacity of the state, earlier on during this weekend, we actually heard about the capacity of the ANC itself. What decisions or what's the conference thinking around capacitating the movement or the party itself?
What was important about the first 2 days of the conference was that it will be meaningless for us to forge ahead to discuss immediate policies without discussing the state of the ANC. Because in the first instance, you need the ANC organizationally that is ready enough to implement those policies. The past 3 days were quite important because all stakeholders, including in the commissions, I think there was general agreement that the ANC in its current state, there are certain things that needs to be done to correct that, to self-correct, having had so many challenges. And I think what is going to be emerging, which would be a report back this afternoon, is that the ANC, there's an appreciation that there are certain things that we must not do for the sake of the African National Congress if the ANC is to implement the very same policies that we'll be adopting in December.
All right. Failing which, what are the consequences for the ANC should it not implement its very own policy?
Failure is not an option. Failure cannot be an option emerging out of here because the ANC dare not fail the people of South Africa. We're here for the people of South Africa. We dare not fail them. They've bestowed their trust on us for the past 23 years. We have a trust bestowed upon us by people of South Africa that we must continue under construction to improve their lives. We have no option, but policies that must come here must address their immediate interests and aspirations.
All right, Mr. Zizi Kodwa, thank you very much for joining us. That was Zizi Kodwa, the spokesperson of the ANC, talking to us about what's expected to come from this conference and also just the importance of the ANC doing its utmost not to fail the people of South Africa. For us, from us in Nasrec for the time being, it's over to you guys in studio, and we hope to talk to you a little bit later.
Thank you, Lukhanya Calata, coming to us live from Nasrec. Now, breaking news just in. It's on your screen now for a couple of minutes. Emergency services say that 14 people have died following a head-on collision between a minibus taxi and a truck on the R541 between Badplaas and Machado.